Missouri. Now let's get started. Members of the National Assembly are at this hour voting on the political parties amendment bill to, members of the political parties amendment bill was locked by dramatic scenes on the floor of the National Assembly. Now remember, members opposed to the bill were on incessant points of order that the Deputy Speaker at one point regarded disguised filibustering. Here is an excerpt of what happened earlier.
Yesterday I did rise in my place and request that this House admits reports to this House procedurally following the provisions of Article 118 of the Constitution that requires us to have public participation. Mr. Speaker, from the chair yesterday you said public participation cannot be seen to be a cosmetic affair. Mr. Speaker, yesterday evening the Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs met, Mr. Speaker. And this is a house of records. No. Mr. Speaker, if we went, Mr. Speaker, allow me. Allow me to make my point.
I'm not going to allow
you. Mr. Speaker, there is no consideration of memos that came in yesterday, and we cannot say that we have done conclusive public participation.
Which says 70% of the fund proportionately be distributed by reference to the total number of votes secured by each political party in the preceding general election. 15% of the fund proportionately to political parties based on the number of candidates of the political party from special interest groups elected in the preceding general election. And that 10% of the fund proportionately to political parties based on the total number of representatives from the political party elected in the preceding general election, and then 5% for the administration expenses of the fund. The funds for a political party is yet another element that those who are for this particular bill say it will be addressing some of the issues that have been experienced before by political parties who were in coalitions on matters of distribution of funds. Clause 17 of the bill provides for the amendment.
Yesterday I did rise in my place and
of the Act to provide that the publication of a political party's
from this headquarters, there cannot be any heckling member. Members can only consult a little higher. So what the most important thing is to summarize. No, I cannot be a heckler. You summarize and we are fine.
Mr. Speaker, we also need to delete the constitutional provisions from the Act, including Section 22(3) that attempts to introduce a new ground on how a vacancy arises in Parliament of established. So, in effect, this is a bill that we will have to go to the other House.
Mr. Speaker, these members, if they are the numbers, we have been told about 100 members supporting a particular cause. Mr. Speaker, you can see when we come to the floor of this House, the members are hardly 20, and that is why they are making noise, because they know they don't have the capacity, they don't have the numbers, they don't have even intellectual capacity to argue their case, and therefore they will continue making noise. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the provisions of this bill, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that now even political parties which don't have the numbers in the House but have elected leaders will benefit from political parties' funds.
It has some merits and it has some demerits. Mr. Speaker, Article 94 of the Constitution is clear. When it comes to matters of legislation, this House has the legislative authority. Mr. Speaker, we are going to do this bill, and where there's an issue, Mr. Speaker, in the committee of the whole House, we are going to propose amendments. I request the honorable members, Mr. Speaker, we debate this bill with decorum. Mr. Speaker, I want to take members to the memory lane. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, we were in coalition, Mr. Speaker. This was Ford Kenya, NASA, and ODM. Then 2017, we had Wiper, ANC, Ford Kenya, and ODM. And when we confronted some political parties, Mr. Speaker, she could not send us political parties funding directly. It had to go to the big brother ODM. And Mr. Speaker, now with this law, the flow of political parties will be able to disperse funds directly to that members of that coalition, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you look at this bill, Mr. Speaker, when you look at this bill, it will reduce the threshold for you to gain the party's fund.
Political parties are funded by the exchequer to the tune of 0.3% of the national revenue. Okay, we'll be making an amendment to that because the national revenue reference was in 2011. Now we know a shareable revenue, which excluding the money of counties. But that money is only accessible to what we call the big boys. That money has never been accessible to the small parties. So small parties will have 3-4 members of parliament, they will have a governor, they will have some members of assemblies, but they cannot access the national kitty that's set up to promote the growth of democracy in this country. So one of the amendments that are being proposed in this law is to lower the thresholds for access to the national funds that are being provided for the growth of democracy in this country. So any party that wins a seat, be it in a county assembly, be it as a governor, be it in the Senate, or be it in this National Assembly, has put enough effort to merit participating in the sharing of the national funds.
Those are pictures.